Hello, I'm Annetta Wilson for the Central Florida Society of Afro-American Heritage. The Society has prepared this tape to help give residents an appreciation of the history of Afro-Americans in Central Florida. What's so important about Afro-American history? It's important because it's the history of a people. It's important because it's a history that's rarely seen. It's a history that's still being uncovered by the Society's volunteers. Too often when people think of Afro-American history, they think only of slavery. Well, that is a painful and important part of our history, but it's only a small part. What you usually don't hear is that there were blacks among the crews in Columbus's expeditions to the New World. You usually don't hear that there was at least one black among the settlers who landed at Plymouth Rock on the Mayflower. You don't hear stories about how African Americans persevered and even triumphed despite hostile conditions and situations. These are just some of the things you're going to hear about in this tape as we explore Central Florida's African American heritage and history through the eyes of my guests. Our first guest is State Representative Alzo Reddick, and later we'll be talking with Dr. Minnie Woodruff, who is principal of the John Young Elementary School. Welcome, Representative Reddick. It is an honor to have you here.
Delighted to be here.
It's been a long time since we've had a chance just to sit and chat.
Old times again.
And that's what this tape is all about, old times, letting people know what happened when, where we came from, because it's been once said, you don't know where you're going unless you know where you came from. And you've been in this town a long time and have seen a lot of changes. What was it like for you growing up as a little boy? I mean, now you're a state representative, but at that time, it was probably just a dream for a young black boy living in Orange County to think one day I'm going to be in the halls of power in Tallahassee.
Well, it's nothing that I could have envisioned in 1944 when we moved to Orlando. Paramore and Jackson Street would remind one of what Harlem must have been like. Right after the war, there was a great deal of activity. The Paradise Club was on North Paramore. The Sunshine Club was on South Street. And I grew up one block east of West Paramore, and across the street from the Walker Hotel, and one block south of Church Street. And there was a great deal of activity in that community. Shiloh Baptist Church was on Jackson Street. Dr. Hankins lived there at that time. Dr. Epperson was the black dentist. Dr. Wells was one street over on South Street. And really the hub of the black professional class. You find the doctors there. They were all located generally in that area.
What kind of role models were these people for you? Were they the kind of people that the kids would go, wow, there's Dr. So-and-so?
Well, for example, Dr. Smith did not arrive until 1948, and so Dr. Wells, Dr. Hankins, Dr. Callahan were here, and the person that I was closest to was Dr. Eccleston. Dr. Eccleston lived in the same block, corner of Jackson and Lee, and he had a very immaculate home. The home is still very well maintained, and the house looked like something out of Good Housekeeping. Of course, we didn't know what Good Housekeeping was. Mm-hmm. Dr. Hankins' home was just immaculate. And so when people talk about the good old days, there were always black people in the community that had the highest standards in terms of how women were treated, how the houses were maintained. So my memories of especially Dr. Eccleston and Dr. Hankins, they just looked elegant. They were very respected people, and they treated their wives a certain way. All of that was a part of growing up on Jackson Street.
Was it kind of like having an additional set of several additional sets of parents because everybody kind of looked out for the young kids growing up?
It wasn't that way with the professionals to this extent. We had very little actual interaction with Dr. Eccleston or Dr. Hankins, but they were there, and they were the people that we looked up. I didn't know that they were role models at this time, mm-hmm. but we know that we behaved a little better. The noise cut down. We didn't throw rocks in Dr. Eccleston's yard. There were just a number of things that happened that were conditioning us somewhat, and it's only in retrospect that we get a better view of them.
And can appreciate
yes.
that. Now, one of the gentlemen that's mentioned in the booklet that the Society has put together is Attorney Collier, the first black attorney in this area.
Well, Attorney Collier, for example, grew up just east of Paramore Street in the 600 block of Jackson Street, and of course he was just beginning his practice by the time that I was in the 6th grade. And my memories of Attorney Collier and his brother and sister, well, it was like they were, to the manner born, they were the children of the most prosperous of the largest church in the area, and they were really people that we admired and respected because they had many of the good things of life, and my knowledge of him is not as close as that of Attorney Perkins, who moved to Orlando when I was, I guess, the 6th or 7th grade, and of course he lived on Jackson Street also, and of course the impression that Attorney Perkins and Attorney Collier had, well, it was multifold. We can think of a number of attorneys that now graduated from law school as a result of having had those first two attorneys here in Orlando.
Well, let's talk about you. A lot of people only see you on television or read about you in the newspaper. And we want to find out a little bit about Alzo Reddick, the man who grew up here, and how that environment impacted what you're doing right now. What were some of the memories that you have that led to decisions that you made about what you're doing now?
I think the two most significant things that I could share with you about my life was being taken in 1945, I believe it was, by Mrs. Eddie Jackson to the Black Library on Terry Street, near Terry and Church Street. And I'd never seen so many books in my life, hand-me-down books at Holden Street School notwithstanding, but I just fell in love. If you can think about a kid in the 2nd grade, I'd just never seen so many books, and it was the most fascinating experience. And so what I could do very well early on was that I could read, and I could read very well, and Mrs. Jackson was responsible for opening that up frequently. So that's one of those peak experiences for me. The other thing that happened is, in Ms. Brown's class, I was elected class president when I was in the 4th grade.
Now, why are we not surprised by that?
Well, I think that the reason I guess I want to share that with people is because I could read, never could do math very well, but there was whatever leadership was, and it was the first time that my classmates said Alzo is going to be president, and it takes me through some tough times now when you say, well, for example, I run into opposition on a political stand, and I said the first people that said that Alzo had potential were my classmates. They were all black in 1948, and consequently, the teacher, Mrs. Brown, said that we're going to compete in a white world at some point. The Ku Klux Klan could still walk up and down Orange Blossom Trail at that time, and in 1948, getting ready for the Pepper Smathers campaign, it was almost a subversive activity for blacks to talk about voting. But I can remember counseling a play because we were afraid the Ku Klux Klan was not only going to come down Orange Blossom Trail, but maybe down Carter Street, and that's one of my early memories. And the other memory is the campaign of Claude Pepper to retain his Senate seat, and blacks were becoming more involved. And so my political awakening began, I guess, between the 5th and the 4th and the 6th grade, and have been interested in politics. But it was not until, I believe, 1968 that the first black legislator was elected to the Florida legislature since the end of Reconstruction, and that was the Honorable Joe Lang Kershaw from Dade County. And so if I had indicated that I wanted to become a legislator in 48, 58, when I graduated from high school in 56, they would have said, do not stop and talk about it, go directly to Chattahoochee, because that is where you belong. And of course we had separate facilities for that also.
Did you feel a sense of danger growing up? You know, you've always been a vocal person, always been a person who voiced his beliefs. Was there a time that you can remember when maybe that would have been a little injurious to your health to do that?
Yes, I can remember Carrie Craddock being hit at the Carver Theater, which is located at the corner of Paramore and Church Street. And I keep using these references because I want people to understand sometime in the future of what it was like. The Carver Theater was located at that area, and I believe the ticket taking had been disrespected, and Carrie was one of my classmates, class of 56, and Mr. Gordon's son, I believe, attempted to hit him with a flashlight, and we had quite an well, people were extremely upset. I'm trying to search for the right word, but anyway, I've never been back to the Carver Theater since that time, and there were several. That was boycott 54, 55. I've never been in the Carver Theater again. I was also president of the NAACP, the Junior NAACP, and my activities with Mr. Riley, with the Black Chamber of Commerce, the Negro Chamber of Commerce it was called at that time, my activities were contained primarily in the black community, talking to classmates and people at school, and there were some things that I resented, and for example, did not go back to the Carver Theater ever again, would not eat from the back of the diner, the silver slipper or something on 441, and I'd get a few jokes that I wouldn't go in the back, but if I had had confrontations, I'm not sure that I'd be here today. It was only after I went to college and I became involved in the sit-in strike at my college in Waco, Texas, but I'm very fortunate that nothing happened. But remember, in Orlando, when I was growing up, there were not sit-in demonstrations. We were primarily insisting that African Americans be treated more respectfully in our community. And at that time, the black policemen were still restrained to patrolling very specific areas. And at that time, they were not permitted to arrest white people at that time.
Now, there are probably some people sitting out there, especially our young people, who are going, I don't believe this. I mean, what can you say to these young people now who maybe don't have the sense of the struggle that you went through? What's one of the most important things you can get across to these young people, and how they can continue to carry that torch that you and others lit so long ago?
Well, Officer Perry is a very respected and retired member of the Orlando Police Department. The link between Officer Perry patrolling Paramore and Church Street with the black trousers on, the white shirt, and Officer Jones and all the officers until this point where we now have a deputy major. It all began in 51, 52, sometime about that time to this point when we're taping this show, that there's a direct connection between African Americans being given an opportunity and climbing that ladder. And at some point, we're going to have the first black chief, not deputy chief. But remember, it all began with Officer Perry, Officer Jones, and a number of others taking that first step. And so I guess my contribution is that we have an opportunity to make contributions, but we've got to believe in ourselves, and somebody has to make that first step. And whatever progress any of us have made, it's because someone took a step and made a track where it was a little easier to slide another foot into that track. And the bottom line is that I think we're going to see greater accomplishments from another generation of young African Americans.
So your outlook is positive?
My outlook is positive, absolutely.
And I'm playing devil's advocate here because you hear a lot of especially young black people say, well, that was ancient history. Those struggles were fought a long time ago. We don't have to deal with that kind of thing now. It's not important anymore. Tell them why it is still important.
It's still important because there are still mind games that people play that African Americans have big behinds and little brains. And if you know that a black American just won the first gold medal for swimming, and you know how well some of us are doing in physics, there are those mind games that you take with this pigmentation that the good Lord has given us. And so it's important that another generation of young African Americans know that it's not the pigmentation, but it's the mental attitude, and there will be battles to fight for as long as people have feelings of bigotry or prejudice. And they must be armed with a belief in their ability to get things done. That's why it's not ancient history. It's futuristic, left brain, right brain thinking.
Well, we're glad you came to share a little bit of your life with us that we didn't know about, the fact that Jackson Street was kind of the hub of the black community so many years ago, and that you got your start in politics in 4th grade. That's something someone might want to write in your biography one day. We appreciate you being here, and we wish you continued success in Tallahassee.
Thank you very much.
Our next guest is Dr. Minnie Woodruff, who is principal of John Young Elementary School. Thank you very much for being with us. It's my pleasure. You are going to talk to us about another section of Orange County that a lot of old-timers will remember if we say names like Hanibal Square, Winter Park, which is your home. How has Winter Park, we see what Winter Park is now, Usually you think of Winter Park, people think of Park Avenue and the shops and that kind of thing. But there was another whole side of life there that doesn't get a lot of mention in history books or that kind of thing. What was it like growing up as a little girl in Winter Park?
Absolutely. Growing up in Winter Park was, I have to say, a little bit different from growing up in Orlando. Basically, the blacks who were in Winter Park had come to work in, do domestic jobs, so forth and so on, for the well-to-do white population that migrated from the north. Rollins College, I'd have to say, played a very important part, very influential in what happened for blacks. It was a kind of, we will take care of you. And so there was a gentleman whose name was Chase, I believe, who developed an area called Hanibal Square. And in that, he designated an area for a church and said that it would double as a school. And then, of course, you had your local shops, such as your drugstore, your Masonic Lodge, basic institutions for that community.
Now, for people who don't know, where is Hanibal Square in Winter Park?
Okay, Hanibal Square is sort of like west of Virginia, north of Morris Boulevard, south of Morris Boulevard, kind of north, if you will, of Fairbanks, kind of in that general nucleus right in there.
Growing up there, you said, was different from growing up in Orlando, which makes it